There is a painful lie that many people begin believing in their 60s. My happiest years are behind me. But what if they are not? What if happiness after 60 is not about getting your youth back, having fewer problems, or pretending that aging does not exist? What if true happiness comes from finally understanding what was never worth chasing in the first place? For much of your life, you may have been running toward a career, running toward money, running toward recognition, running toward a bigger house, running toward approval, running toward the next achievement. And perhaps you told yourself that one day, when everything was finally in place, you would relax. Then the years passed. Children grew older. Careers ended. Responsibilities changed. Your body changed. And suddenly you arrived at a stage of life where the question became different. Not, how much more can I achieve? But, what actually makes a life worth living? That question can feel frightening. But it can also be liberating. Because the 60s can mark the beginning of a profound shift. You can stop living according to everyone else's definition of success. You can stop trying to impress people who are barely thinking about you. You can stop postponing joy. You can stop treating rest as laziness. You can stop believing that your worth depends on your productivity. And you can begin choosing your life deliberately. This is where Stoicism becomes remarkably relevant. The ancient Stoics did not promise a life without pain. They knew that people would experience loss, aging, failure, illness, disappointment, death. They understood that none of us can control everything that happens. But they also understood something incredibly powerful. Your happiness becomes more stable when you stop demanding that life obey your wishes. Epictetus taught the importance of distinguishing between what is within our control and what is not. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself to focus on the present moment, and the character he could bring to it. Seneca warned against wasting the limited time we possess. Their wisdom was not about escaping life. It was about learning how to live it. And that becomes especially important after 60. Because happiness at this stage of life may look very different from happiness at 20. When you're 20, happiness might mean excitement. At 30, it might mean achievement. At 40, perhaps security. At 50, perhaps freedom. But after 60, happiness often becomes something quieter. Peace, meaning, connection, gratitude, purpose, a good morning, a meaningful conversation, a walk outside, a book that changes your perspective, a meal shared with someone you love, the ability to wake up and not feel that you have to prove anything. That kind of happiness is not flashy, but it can be incredibly deep. There was a man named Daniel who discovered this after retirement. For 40 years, Daniel measured his life through accomplishment. He was proud of his career. He worked hard. He earned well. He provided for his family. He had always told himself that retirement would be wonderful. Then retirement came. For the first few weeks, Daniel loved it. No alarm. No meetings. No commute. No deadlines. But after several months, something strange happened. He became restless. He had achieved the freedom he had spent decades wanting, yet he wasn't happy. He started asking himself, "What's wrong with me?" The answer eventually became clear. Daniel had spent so many years pursuing goals that he had forgotten how to simply live. He knew how to work. He knew how to achieve. He knew how to solve problems. But he had never learned how to appreciate an ordinary Tuesday morning. So he began changing his life. He started taking walks. He read philosophy. He called old friends. He volunteered. He began cooking. He planted vegetables. He spent more time with his grandchildren. And slowly, something changed. Nothing dramatic happened. He didn't become rich. He didn't become famous. His life did not suddenly become perfect. But he became peaceful. One morning, sitting outside with a cup of coffee, Daniel realized something. He had spent decades waiting for happiness to arrive as an event. But happiness had been hiding inside ordinary moments all along. That realization is at the heart of this video. Because true happiness after 60 is not about chasing a perfect life. It is about learning to appreciate the life you actually have while continuing to improve what you can. In this video, we're going to explore 7 Stoic principles for becoming genuinely happier in your 60s and beyond. These principles are not about pretending everything is fine. They are not about denying pain. They are not about forcing yourself to smile when life hurts. They are about building an inner foundation strong enough to experience both joy and difficulty without being destroyed by either. And if you find this kind of wisdom valuable, subscribe to Stoic Compass. This channel is dedicated to practical Stoicism, self-mastery, inner peace, resilience, discipline, and timeless wisdom for living a stronger and more meaningful life. Because your 60s are not the closing credits. They are another chapter. And perhaps, because of everything you've already experienced, they can become one of your wisest chapters. So let's begin with the first principle. And it may be the most important of all. 1. Stop trying to control what was never yours to control. One of the greatest sources of unhappiness is trying to control things that were never under your control. Other people's opinions. Other people's behavior. The past. The weather. The economy. Your adult children's decisions. What people say about you. How quickly time passes. The fact that your body is aging. You can spend enormous amounts of emotional energy fighting these realities. But reality does not negotiate. The Stoics understood this. They recognized that life becomes more peaceful when you clearly separate what belongs to you from what does not. Your choices belong to you. Your attitude belongs to you. Your effort belongs to you. Your response belongs to you. But outcomes are never completely yours. Consider a retired woman named Margaret. Her son had made a series of decisions she strongly disagreed with. She worried constantly. She called him repeatedly. She offered advice. She tried to persuade him. She imagined every possible disaster. Her son eventually told her, "Mom, I know you love me, but I need to make my own decisions." Margaret was devastated. She felt powerless. But eventually she began studying Stoicism. She realized something uncomfortable. She had confused love with control. She could love her son. She could offer wisdom. She could support him. But she could not live his life for him. That realization changed their relationship. She stopped trying to manage every decision. She became available instead of controlling. And strangely, their relationship improved. This is one of the paradoxes of Stoicism. When you release the things you cannot control, you often become better at handling the things you can. Your adult children will make mistakes. Let them learn. Friends may disappoint you. Decide how you will respond. People may misunderstand you. You do not have to spend your life correcting every opinion. Your body will change. Care for it without demanding that it remain 25. Time will pass. Use today rather than grieving tomorrow. The goal is not indifference. It is proper allocation of energy. Ask yourself, is this actually mine to control? If the answer is no, release the struggle. If the answer is yes, act. That simple question can eliminate enormous amounts of unnecessary anxiety. And imagine how much energy becomes available when you stop fighting reality. Instead of worrying about whether your children will make the right choices, you can enjoy the time you have with them. Instead of worrying about whether everyone respects you, you can focus on being respectable. Instead of fearing every sign of aging, you can care for your body while appreciating what it has allowed you to experience. You do not need to defeat aging. You need to live wisely within it. And once you stop fighting what you cannot control, another source of happiness becomes visible. Gratitude. Because peace does not only come from removing what is wrong. It also comes from noticing what is already right. 2. Practice gratitude for what you still have. Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that everything you currently take for granted has disappeared. Your favorite chair. Your morning routine. Your ability to call someone you love. The familiar sound of your home. The ability to walk outside. The people whose names appear on your phone. the ordinary things that rarely receive your attention. Suddenly, they would become precious. But why wait for loss to teach you their value? Gratitude is one of the simplest ways to transform your relationship with your life. And gratitude does not mean pretending everything is perfect. You can be grateful and still have problems. You can miss someone and still appreciate someone else. You can experience pain and still recognize beauty. You can acknowledge what is difficult without becoming blind to what remains. There was an elderly man named Thomas who had developed a habit of complaining every morning. His coffee wasn't hot enough. The weather was unpredictable. His neighbors were noisy. His television annoyed him. His body felt slower. One morning, his granddaughter visited him. She sat beside him and asked, "Grandpa, what's the best thing about today?" Thomas almost laughed. He had been preparing to complain. But he stopped. He looked around. The morning sunlight was coming through the window. His granddaughter was sitting beside him. He had coffee in his hands. His house was warm. He realized he had been surrounded by blessings while training his mind to notice only inconveniences. That moment changed his morning ritual. Every day afterward, before reaching for his phone, Thomas named 3 things he appreciated. Sometimes they were significant. Sometimes they were incredibly ordinary. A good conversation. A warm meal. A quiet morning. A funny memory. A comfortable bed. A bird outside his window. The point was not to manufacture happiness. It was to train his attention. Because attention determines what you experience. 2 people can live almost identical lives while experiencing them completely differently. One constantly notices what is missing. The other notices what remains. Neither person has complete control over circumstances. But their experience can be radically different. Stoicism encourages us to recognize the temporary nature of everything. That may sound depressing. It can actually make ordinary moments more beautiful. When you understand that a moment will not last forever, you appreciate it differently. The conversation with your spouse. The laughter of your grandchildren. The meal with an old friend. The sunlight across the floor. The sound of rain. The ability to wake up another morning. These moments are temporary. That does not make them meaningless. It makes them precious. So don't wait for something to disappear before appreciating it. Look around. What is still here? Who is still here? What can you still do? What can you still experience? What can you still learn? What can you still give? These questions can completely change the emotional landscape of retirement. And gratitude naturally leads to another principle. Because once you appreciate the life you have, you can stop measuring it against someone else's. 3. Stop comparing your life to other people. Comparison can steal happiness faster than almost anything. You look at someone else's house, their retirement, their health, their family, their travel, their finances, their appearance, their social life. And suddenly, your own life seems smaller. But comparison is often based on incomplete information. You see their highlight reel. You don't see their private worries. You see the vacation. You don't see the arguments. You see the smile. You don't see the anxiety. You see the achievement. You don't see the sacrifices. The Stoics understood that external status is not the foundation of a good life. Someone can possess enormous wealth and still be miserable. Someone can possess very little and still experience peace. The question is not, what does everyone else have? The question is, am I living according to my values? There was a retired couple named John and Helen who constantly compared themselves with their neighbors. Their neighbors traveled more. They had a larger house. Their garden looked better. They seemed to have more money. John became increasingly dissatisfied. Then one evening, he had a conversation with his neighbor. He discovered that the neighbor was deeply stressed about debt. The beautiful house was expensive to maintain. The frequent travel was partly an attempt to escape problems at home. John went home that evening and looked at his own life differently. He realized he had been comparing his reality with an illusion. From then on, He and Helen adopted a new question. Are we living well according to what matters to us? They stopped trying to compete. They simplified. They spent more time with friends. They traveled occasionally. They focused on experiences rather than appearances. Their circumstances had barely changed. Their happiness had. Comparison creates an endless race because there will always be someone ahead of you in something. Someone richer. Someone fitter. Someone younger. Someone more successful. Someone more popular. If your happiness depends on being ahead, you will never feel secure. Stoicism offers another path. Measure yourself against your own character. Are you more patient than you were 5 years ago? More disciplined? More grateful? More courageous? More generous? More peaceful? Those are meaningful victories. Your goal is not to defeat another person. Your goal is to become a better version of yourself. And this becomes especially important after 60. You don't need to prove that your life looks impressive. You need to make sure it feels meaningful to you. That means defining your own version of success. Maybe success now means having peaceful mornings. Maybe it means being present with family. Maybe it means maintaining independence. Maybe it means helping others. Maybe it means learning. Maybe it means traveling. Maybe it means creating. Maybe it means simply living without constantly worrying about what others think. Your life does not need to resemble someone else's. It needs to be yours. And when comparison becomes quieter, you have more room for something else. Relationships. Because true happiness becomes much deeper when it is shared. 5. Make peace with your past. Many people enter their 60s carrying invisible luggage. Regrets. Mistakes. Missed opportunities. Bad decisions. Broken relationships. Things they wish they had said. Things they wish they had never said. Years they wish they could redo. But the past has one unforgiving quality. It does not move backward. You can remember it. Study it. Learn from it. But you cannot return to it. That is why carrying endless regret is like repeatedly paying a debt that has already been paid. You don't need to forget your mistakes. You need to learn from them. There was a man named Richard who spent decades regretting one business decision. He had invested money into a company that eventually failed. He lost a significant amount. For years, he replayed the decision. If only I had known. If only I had waited. If only I had listened. His wife eventually asked him, "How many times are you going to lose that money?" Richard looked confused. She said, "You lost it once. But every day, you lose your peace because you keep reliving it." That sentence stayed with him. He realized she was right. The financial loss had happened once. The emotional loss was happening repeatedly. So he began changing his relationship with the past. Instead of asking, "How could I have been so stupid?" he asked, "What did that experience teach me?" The question changed everything. He learned about risk. He learned humility. He learned that certainty is often an illusion. And he stopped punishing himself. That is not weakness. It is wisdom. You cannot change who you were. But you can decide who you become because of what happened. Maybe you made mistakes as a parent. Learn. Maybe you chose the wrong career. Learn. Maybe you wasted years chasing money. Learn. Maybe you trusted the wrong person. Learn. Maybe you were too afraid to pursue something. Learn. The past becomes valuable when it becomes instruction, not when it becomes punishment. The Stoics understood that yesterday is outside your control. Today is where your agency lives. So ask, "What can I do now?" That question brings you back to life. And making peace with your past does not mean refusing responsibility. If you hurt someone, apologize if possible. If you made a mistake, correct what can be corrected. If you owe someone something, make amends. But once you have done what is reasonably within your power, stop reopening the wound simply to punish yourself. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to become different. You are allowed to say, "I was wrong." And then, "I will do better." That is enough. And once you stop living backward, you can begin living more intentionally forward. Which brings us to another essential source of happiness: purpose. Subscribe to Stoic Compass for more timeless lessons, Stoic wisdom, and discipline. 6. Give yourself a reason to wake up. A person can have money and still feel empty. A comfortable home and still feel restless. Free time and still feel lost. Why? Because comfort without purpose can become emptiness. When you retire, one of the biggest changes is the disappearance of external structure. Your job no longer tells you where to go. Your employer no longer needs you at a certain hour. There may be fewer deadlines. At first, this feels like freedom. But eventually you may realize that humans need more than freedom. We need direction. We need something worth doing. Something worth caring about. Something that makes tomorrow matter. Purpose does not have to be grand. You don't need to start a company. You don't need to change the world. Purpose can be small. Take care of your garden. Mentor someone. Help your family. Volunteer. Write your story. Learn a skill. Exercise. Teach your grandchildren. Serve your community. Create something. Study philosophy. Build friendships. Purpose is not necessarily a destination. It is a reason to engage with today. There was a retired teacher named Samuel who felt lost after leaving work. For 40 years, students had depended on him. Then suddenly, there were no students. He felt invisible. One day, a neighbor asked him to help her grandson with reading. Samuel agreed. He began meeting with the boy twice a week. Then another child joined. Then another. Eventually, Samuel was spending several mornings each week helping children develop their reading skills. He wasn't being paid. He wasn't trying to rebuild his career. He simply had something useful to give. His confidence returned. His mornings had purpose. And he realized retirement had not removed his usefulness. It had simply changed the way he could use it. That lesson matters. Your identity does not have to disappear when your job ends. You can carry the best parts of who you were into a new chapter. Maybe you were a manager. Mentor someone. Maybe you were a cook. Teach someone. Maybe you were a builder. Make something. Maybe you were a parent. Share your wisdom. Maybe you were a business owner. Help someone starting out. Your experience can become a gift. And purpose also gives structure to time. When you know what matters, decisions become easier. You wake up with direction. You know what deserves attention. You know what can wait. You know what is unnecessary. This brings us to one final principle. Because purpose can tell you what matters. But you still need to protect the limited time you have left. 7. Treat your time as precious. Imagine someone placed a box in front of you every morning. Inside was a certain amount of money. Whatever you didn't spend that day disappeared forever. Would you waste it? Probably not. You would think carefully. You would spend it on what mattered. But time is more valuable than money. And unlike money, you cannot earn yesterday back. Seneca wrote extensively about time because he understood how easily people give it away. We waste hours worrying about things we cannot control. We spend afternoons scrolling. We remain in pointless arguments. We postpone meaningful experiences. We say, someday. But someday is not guaranteed. After 60, the value of time becomes even more obvious. That doesn't mean you should become anxious about every minute. Quite the opposite. You should become more peaceful about using it well. There was a woman named Margaret who had always dreamed of visiting her sister. The two had talked about it for years. Someday we'll take that trip. But something always came up. Then one year, her sister became seriously ill. Margaret realized that, someday, had almost disappeared. She made the trip. They spent a week together. They talked about childhood. They laughed. They looked through old photographs. It became one of the most meaningful weeks of Margaret's life. The lesson wasn't simply, travel more. It was, don't endlessly postpone what matters. Call the person. Take the trip. Read the book. Plant the garden. Learn the skill. Say thank you. Apologize. Spend time with the people you love. You don't need to live recklessly. You need to live deliberately. And treating time as precious also means protecting it. Not every invitation deserves a yes. Not every argument deserves your energy. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every news story deserves an hour of your day. Not every person deserves unlimited access to your peace. Your time is finite. Spend it accordingly. Ask yourself each morning, what deserves my attention today? Then give your attention there. Maybe it's family. Maybe it's health. Maybe it's learning. Maybe it's service. Maybe it's creativity. Maybe it's rest. Rest itself can be meaningful when chosen intentionally. You don't have to fill every hour. A peaceful afternoon is not a wasted afternoon. Sitting outside. Reading. Listening to music. Watching the sunset. Having tea with someone you love. These moments can be life. You do not always need productivity. You need presence. And perhaps this is where all 7 principles come together. True happiness after 60 is not about eliminating every problem. It is about changing your relationship with life. You stop trying to control everything. You appreciate what remains. You stop comparing. You invest in relationships. You make peace with your past. You create purpose. And you protect your time. That is a different kind of happiness. A quieter happiness. A stronger happiness. A happiness that doesn't depend entirely on circumstances. And that is precisely what Stoicism has been trying to teach for more than 2,000 years. You don't need life to become perfect. You need yourself to become wiser about how you live it. Perhaps you have spent years believing happiness would arrive after the next achievement. After retirement. After the mortgage. After the children grew up. After the difficult season ended. But life keeps changing. There will always be another problem. Another uncertainty. Another thing you cannot control. So if happiness depends on everything going perfectly, happiness will always be postponed. Stoicism offers another possibility. You can learn to be grateful now. You can choose your response now. You can love people now. You can forgive now. You can create purpose now. You can use your time wisely now. You can enjoy an ordinary morning now. You can take a walk. Read a book. Call an old friend. Plant something. Learn something. Help someone. Sit quietly. Watch the sunset. And realize, this is your life. Not the life you had 20 years ago. Not the life you wish you had. Not the life someone else has. This one. This day. This moment. And there is freedom in accepting that. Your 60s do not have to be a period of decline. They can be a period of refinement. You know more now. You have survived things that once seemed impossible. You have learned what matters. You have learned what doesn't. You have lost people. You have gained wisdom. You have made mistakes. You have recovered. You have changed. All of that experience can become strength. So don't spend the rest of your life mourning the person you used to be. Respect that person. Thank that person. Learn from that person. But keep moving. There are still chapters you haven't written. There are still people you haven't met. There are still places you haven't seen. There are still things you haven't learned. There are still mornings waiting for you. And perhaps the greatest gift of growing older is that you finally understand something youth often cannot. You don't need more life. You need to notice the life you already have. If this message gave you something valuable to reflect on, subscribe to Stoic Compass. Here, we explore Stoic philosophy, inner peace, self-mastery, discipline, resilience, purpose, and timeless wisdom for living a stronger and more meaningful life. And if you know someone in their 60s, 70s, or beyond who needs this reminder, share this video with them. Because sometimes happiness doesn't require a new life. It requires a new way of seeing the one you already have. You cannot stop time. But you can stop wasting it. You cannot control everything. but you can control your response. You cannot remain young forever, but you can remain curious. You cannot prevent every loss, but you can appreciate what remains. You cannot rewrite your past, but you can choose what you do with its lessons. And you cannot guarantee tomorrow, but you can live today well. So tomorrow morning, when you wake up, don't begin by asking, "What am I losing?" Ask, "What am I still able to give?" Don't ask, "What used to be?" Ask, "What can still become?" And don't ask, "Is it too late?" Ask, "What can I begin today?" Because as long as you are here, the answer is almost certainly something. Learn something. Love someone. Help someone. Create something. Forgive someone. Explore something. Appreciate something. And live. Not perfectly. Not fearlessly. But deliberately. That is enough. That is Stoicism. And perhaps that is where true happiness begins.